So I want to welcome everybody that's on the call. Our intent for this is for this to be very interactive. Down at the bottom of your screens, you'll see a Q&A box. At any time, you may type a question in there, and we'll try to address it as quickly as we can. If there's anything you want us to talk about or any situations, like I said, just put it in that chat box. My name is Betty Rich. I'm one of the owners of Connected Health. We are a concierge primary care provider along with everything medical, pharmacy, fitness, and nutrition. We are kind of all about proactive and preventative measures in health that we can take to live our best lives. We believe that's what primary care is supposed to be. It's not just supposed to be sick care. It's supposed to be helping. How do we help our patients stay healthy? One of our physicians is joining us today. That's Dr. Christopher Conti, and I'll let him introduce himself. And then from Signature Financial, Debbie Graver. So she also is very passionate about talking to young people, young adults, about healthy habits going forward in their financial lives. And we are passionate about healthy habits going forward in our health lives journey, health journey. So I want to just start this off, if I can, by launching a poll. And if everybody could just answer this question for me. And then I believe you just hit submit. Okay. So we have a couple more parents than young adults. We just wanted to know a little bit about our audience and who we're speaking to, but we have a mix of both, so that's great. So let me let Debbie Graver introduce herself. Go ahead, Deb.
Thank you. So I'm excited to be here today. My name's Debbie Graver. I am a financial planner, been in the business for about 30 years. And I really pride myself in educating and empowering people of all ages to make smart financial decisions that can, shape their lives and create a secure future. It's all based on what your goals are. So if you're a young person, your goals may be and probably are significantly different than if you're someone nearing retirement. So the idea is to really understand where you are now and where you want to be. And as a financial planner, I help people do that and have been doing it, like I said, for the past 30 years. So I'm happy to impart some of my knowledge and insight with you fine folks today.
Sorry, I'm talking to myself. Thank you. Dr. Conti, do you want to just introduce yourself?
I'm sure. My name is Chris Conti. I work at Connected Health, where I'm involved in primary care medicine, as well as sports and concussion medicine. And for any young pilots out there, I also am an FAA aviation medical examiner. In my role with Connected Health, particularly with sports and concussion, I have the chance to interact with a lot of young scholar athletes, both in middle school and high school and some in college. And so there's some crossover conversation that occurs in those conversations, not just about sports related health, but about health in general, about some of the transitional realities that go from being, a totally financially and otherwise dependent, young adult who's in high school and living at home to a student on a college campus where once you turn age 18, everything changes from who people can notify about your grades and about your discipline and about all these things. So in that role with my interactions with young people, I've found that trying to help them navigate these really, fun and enjoyable but formative years help shape behaviors that help them well beyond college And when people don't develop these healthier habits, whether it be financial health or physical or emotional, mental health, they tend to have more challenges as they get older because they haven't developed the skill sets that they need. And that's, I think, the main reason why we're here tonight, is to just give you some food for thought about things that you may not even have on your radar screen, just because it's all new to you. So it's not intended to scare you or to try to handcuff people into behaving a certain way. It's just realities. And some of what you're going to hear, I'm sure, from both of us are going to be things that come from lessons we learned as we navigated in some of the mistakes we may have made when we were college age and young adults, that we wish if we could hit the rewind button, we could have done again. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I hope you all find it helpful.
Yeah, I was thinking about a lot about our topic today, and I think as parents, we often forget that our kids don't automatically know what we know. You just, I don't know, just kind of assume, for instance, so my husband and I, we have an 18-year-old that just went off to college for the first time. And, I made sure that he had his insurance card with him, but he probably has absolutely no idea what to do with it, what it means, when he might need it. So, if we don't talk to them about these things and at least introduce them to these ideas, then they just don't know about them. And that oftentimes leads, I think, to not being able to do things earlier on, catch things earlier on, start saving earlier on, things like that, that would be beneficial as they grow older if they had started prior. So with that, I'm going to start with the first question, which is that I have an 18-year-old son who just went off to college. So what do I, or what does my son need to know when it comes to healthy habits in finance? And I'll let Deb start, and then we'll talk about in health.
One of the things that I remember implicitly when I was walking through the student union at school was that the hallway was littered with pull-off tabs to apply for this credit card or that credit card. It seemed like low-hanging fruit to have college kids who wanted to buy things who may not have had the money to do so, offer them a credit card with a small balance allowed, but give them the opportunity to buy things that they want that their parents might not otherwise give to them. And so I had a roommate who really had a problem with spending, and she inherited that from her parents. Honestly, they outspent what they could afford, and so she just kind of followed suit. So I think one of the most important things for kids to know when they're on their own is to know their limits. And there are things you want and there are things you need. And you have to, I don't like to say set a budget. It has to be more of a mental and a mindful process to say, is this something I need? And therefore it's a reasonable expense, or is this something I want? And maybe I wait to purchase that until I've saved enough money from my part-time job, or if my parents are giving me a monthly stipend, I don't spend it all. I save some of it for that future purchase. So you have to spend mindfully and watch out for those credit card offers where I don't think people always realize if you don't pay the balance on time, you get hit with a pretty significant interest charge, which ends up adding to the balance and adding to the balance and adding to the balance, such that over time it can become impossible to pay off. So watch what you're spending your money on. Beer and pizza is okay in moderation, but spend mindfully and as though your parent was looking over your shoulder, even though they're really not.
That's great. Dr. Conti, do you want to kind of answer the same question? Let's start with what is one of the first things that we need to know sending our kids off to college?
Sure. But I think I also want to just say that it took literally over a decade to recover from the credit card thing that we were just talking about for my personal college experience, because and when I was in school, it wasn't even in the student union. They slipped them under your dorm room, and uh, and they attached them to travel vouchers so that you could go home using, as long as you use the credit card to pay the difference between the travel voucher and the cost of the plane ticket, you could use the travel voucher. So everybody got sucked in by using the travel vouchers, and they gave you 3 a year, one for Christmas, one for Thanksgiving, and one to get home. And by the end of 4 years, if you just used it for the travel vouchers, you were several $1,000s in debt. And if you just kind of figured, oh, it's out of sight, out of mind, by the time you finished school, by the time you went to grad school, or by the time you got out of, got your first job and stuff, you were $10,000 in debt. So I would echo that, because I can tell you it took over 10 years to pay it down. So, and that's not including college student loans and all the other things that you develop debt from. But from the health standpoint, again, this is going to be the first time that students are going to be moving out of the house and into dorms, and perhaps living off campus or living outside of where you've grown up. And then you have to start to begin to take ownership of your own health and wellness. And some of it is just informational. You need to know that you have insurance. You need to have your insurance card. You need to have your Social Security card. These are things that you may need to be able to present when you need health care. You're going to have to understand the concept of a copay when you go to an urgent care, or when you go to an emergency department, and you don't just flash the card and get care for free. They're going to ask you about your copay, which is the amount that you may pay on the front end that's not attached to the bill on the back end. And then there's other important kind of data information that you have to know, or that you should start to begin to pay attention to. So you should start to pay attention to things like your blood pressure. The percentage of people in their 20s that have high blood pressure, it's highest in the United States compared to any other place in the world, but it's still relatively low compared to hypertension or high blood pressure in people in their 30s and 40s and 50s and older. But you want to begin to start paying attention to numbers like your blood pressure, knowing what your resting heart rate is, knowing your body mass index, your BMI, which is in many respects more important than knowing your actual body weight. You want to start knowing information about your family history, from your parents, from your grandparents, from your older siblings. What sorts of diseases run in your family? Specifically, are there any unique diseases that are rare, or any diseases at all that have been appearing in your family tree among people in their 20s and their 30s? Things that come to mind that that I've had personal experience with as a physician are things like skin cancer in young people. For example, there is a genetic predisposition to certain types of skin cancer. Unfortunately, the more aggressive types of cancers, like malignant melanoma. And you would want to know that if you've had 2 or 3 family members who've had skin cancer in their 20s and their 30s, even if you're very vigilant about things like sunscreen, then maybe you need to be a bit more vigilant about going to see a dermatologist every year in your 20s, as opposed to maybe putting that off until later. You want to know about those diseases like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, stroke. Just asking those questions to your parents and your grandparents. You want to know, certain things about what your risk factors are for those diseases. So you want to know about what we call the modifiable risk factors, which are those things that your behaviors and your lifestyle can change, as well as those non-modifiable things which you have no control over, like your gender, your age, your family tree, your ethnicity. Because even though you may not be able to necessarily completely avoid certain genetic predisposed things, because if you shake your family tree, there's a bunch of people who have a given condition. If you have careful attention to certain lifestyle things like eating the right foods, getting the right amount of sleep, making sure you're hydrated, avoiding tobacco and alcohol in excess, and those things, you may be able to push off the development of those conditions, even though there's a genetic predisposition. I use I use the example of a set of identical twins who have a predisposition for developing high blood pressure. One of the twins has a really good lifestyle. They're physically active. They monitor and modulate their diet, and they have a really healthy lifestyle. And the other is 30 pounds overweight, smokes a half pack of cigarettes a day, and drinks to excess. Well, the one that has the less optimal lifestyle may develop high blood pressure in their 30s, while the identical twin who has appropriate lifestyle may not develop hypertension until their 80s. And again, so that speaks to knowing what these modifiable risk factors are, because those are the things that your habits now will begin to shape as you get older. So I think those are I think, and that sounds like it's a heavy thing to start to do. You know, I'm in college, why do I have to worry about these things? And it's really, again, because it's just like when you exercise and you develop this, what we call muscle memory. You want to develop the habits now, whether it's your financial stewardship habits or your physical or emotional health habits. And then the final thing I would say for that freshman, that 18-year-old going off to college, one is that there are a lot of transitional things that have just occurred for you, not the least of which is now you're kind of living sort of on your own. But those things can be emotionally overwhelming. And so you want to know very clearly what resources are available for you on campus, whether it's the Student Health Center, which every student should know where it is, as well as the student behavioral health resources and the tutoring resources. Because even if you were the valedictorian of your class, college is a different animal. And sometimes you find yourself struggling and it's new and it's going to create a wave of emotions. And you need to know where those resources are that you can depend on and trust to help you get back to that center and that place where you can, you know, really enjoy college, because college should absolutely be fun. But it's a different space than you've ever experienced before.
And Chris, I just want to share a personal story with you to echo your comments. I remember I'm 6 years younger than my brother, but his freshman year in college, he called home one day sick with certain symptoms. And because diabetes does run in our family, my mother said to him, if you can't keep anything down, and you've been feeling this way for a while and you're losing weight and you're thirsty, and she went through all the symptoms, she said, you better get yourself to the health center because this might be what you have. And she was dead on. So being open and honest, you know, there's nothing to be embarrassed about, whether it's financial or medically or mentally. You know, we all need help, and that's what the professionals are there to do on campus and in the world after school, is to help everyone succeed.
So Deb, in our, at Connected Health, in our world, we like to have these conversations with young people, because again, like we were talking about, once they turn 18, mommy and daddy, you know, can't be a part of all the conversations that they used to be a part of. How does that work on your end, as far as talking directly to the kids, or are you talking to the parents? And where do some of the young people get their information, or where can they get help, or how can they contact? I mean, you would think a financial planner is more than, you know, an 18-year-old is going to have. So how does that work with your clients?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, what's really nice is some of my clients I've known through most of their professional lives. And so I've known their kids since they were little, and they've heard of me or my name, and the parents may have opened up accounts for the kids when they were younger. And as the children get older, we encourage the parents to talk with them about their college savings account if they have one, or about an account that their aunts or uncles established for them and put a couple shares of stock in. So they know the words, but they may not understand the full meaning of it. There's so much information available out there online, and, you know, Mr. or Mrs. Google can tell you a lot, but they can't tell you what it means to you in your situation. And so if you don't really know what information you're looking for, it's information overload. So what happens over time is we do have seminars specifically for those younger kids. And with certain accounts, once they reach the age of 21, the accounts revert over to their control. And so I've got a couple cases right now where it's hard for the parents to let go. You know, they still want to be the ones calling and asking about what's going on with my child's account. Do they own this? Do they own that? How can we get statements? But I have to school them that now it's time for their young adult to take charge. And in most cases, because we've had open conversations through the years, the kids call and they're comfortable asking questions. And I tell them there's no such thing, we've all heard this, as a dumb question. But I was a finance graduate, undergraduate and master's. After I completed my undergraduate degree in finance, I went to my first job and they handed me a packet of information, said, sign up for your benefits. And I looked at this one page and it said 401k. I had no idea what that was. I had studied finance, but I'd study it as though I was an analyst or researcher, not as a personal investor. And luckily there was another young man, another young employee in my group at one of the big banks downtown. And he said, my dad told me to put money in this 401k. And I said, well, we're not making very much money here. I'm living at home. I don't even have a car yet. I've got all these student loans. I can't put any money in my 401k. He said, if you put money in, they'll match it. And so I listened to him. And then later on, I retell that story because when we're young, we don't know what to do and we need someone to go to. And so I try to, again, educate these youngsters to ask questions. If it's their first job, even if it's a summer job, you know, they can open a retirement account and put a little bit of money away. And the more you do at a younger age, the better off you'll be. So, I love questions from youngsters. I do kind of encourage them not to do it all online themselves because you can get into a little bit of trouble that way. It's not a game. Investing is not a game. It's not gambling. It's meant to be a long-term approach to achieve some preset goal, you know, whether it's buying your first house or sending your own kids to college or paying off your student loans. So through the years, we just try to keep the communication open. And then it's really exciting to see the kids turn around, get their first job, and then come back to me and say, okay, can you help me? What's a 401k? And then I get to share my knowledge with them. It's really rewarding.
That's great. And Dr. Conti, you and I were talking today about kind of the same thoughts where, you know, I'm in college and something is going on, but my roommate told me, you know, not to worry about it. Or I asked even the RA on the floor and they said, yeah, it doesn't sound like anything serious. Or, you know, even family that you talk to, like the difficulty for young adults to know the difference, you know, who's an expert, whose advice should they seek out, when to listen to family and friends, and when to know that, you know, you really need to talk to somebody that is a professional in healthcare.
Right. And I think it's critically important because, you know, we don't want anyone to think that we are, you know, anti-communicating with family and friends, because the people who are giving you advice are doing with the best of intentions. But again, I use an example of, you know, if I'm drowning in a lake and the people on the side of the lake see that I'm drowning, but don't know how to swim, if they jump in with the best of intentions, we're both going to drown. And it has nothing to do with their intentions. It has everything to do with their ability. And so when we're talking about physical and emotional and financial health and well-being, you want to make informed decisions with verifiable information. So whether it's to vaccinate or not for COVID, or any vaccination for that matter, or to keep your money in a checking account versus keeping it under your mattress in your dorm room. You know, you're going to get varied opinions. Someone's going to say, oh, my friends told me that the banks are part of this larger scheme, and you don't want to, all you're doing is making millions for the bank. You need to keep your money in your room. That's no different than someone saying, hey, you need to, use 5-hour energy. That's what kept me awake so I could study for my midterms. So you want to get information that is reliable, and that you can verify. Even someone who puts the tag expert after their name doesn't necessarily mean that they're an expert. So you should be vetting every source. And that's part of this whole decade of your 20s, is trying to figure out how are you going to navigate with all the stuff that's coming at you, whether it's about health or any number of other things. And how does it jive with your personality and the way you learn and the way you relate and what your dreams and goals are? And so from a health standpoint, you want to get information that you can trust. So yes, you can trust a student health center. You can trust the urgent care centers and the ER. You should definitely know where all those places are around your campus. But you should want to have the type of relationship with your primary care doctor that is such that it moves with you as you move through the stages of your life, but also as you move physically from your bedroom at home to your dorm room. We have a number of college students who have found our resources at Connected Health very beneficial. Whether it's just, hey, I think I have strep throat, and I didn't know what I should do. So before they went somewhere, they contacted us. I'll just use my son as an example. This was, last winter. So he had what he thought was a little fever. He had a sore throat and a cough. So of course, those are all COVID symptoms, but they could be mono, they could be strep, they could be bronchitis, it could be just a dormitory cold. And so he didn't contact me first, and then called and went to an urgent care just off of campus. And the urgent care promptly, because they didn't take his insurance product, charged him $400 and tested him for everything except for strep, which was probably the cheapest and the most likely diagnosis. And so his call to me was, I need money in my account to pay for all these things that I've already had done. And so I said, well, can I speak to the provider? He's like, well, what's that? I said, the doctor. He's like, I haven't seen the doctor. I said, so who ordered the tests? He said, well, they were ordered as soon as they checked my temperature. So he wasn't even seen by a clinician, and they ordered $400 worth of tests when he maybe needed one, which was strep and maybe COVID. So, it's just, when you have access to a provider who you can trust and rely on, who's accessible, they can help guide you in your decision-making as well. Even if it's, yeah, I think you need to go to the ER, or I think you need to go to student health, or whatever it is. And so, there are definite benefits while you're away and when you come back. All of these students who are going away are going to be coming back home for either, fall break or winter break or both. They may be looking to travel and go visit, classmates who are on other college campuses. And so all those questions about travel in the midst of a pandemic are going to come up. A lot of these college students are going to be up for COVID boosters, either by the end of the fall semester or the beginning of the spring semester. And they're going to need to have questions answered. And so having access to a doctor that locally that you have access to, I think really is an invaluable resource, because that person can also help walk you through this navigating of the 20s so that you develop these healthy habits that we talked about as well. You hear about things like the freshman 20 or the freshman 30 pounds, how maybe you're not a workout type of person, but we can talk through the fact that, hey, doc, I think I'm gaining weight and I've only been on campus since September and it's October 15th and my clothes aren't fitting like they used to. And we can talk through that, because those freshmen 20, 30 pounds get really hard to lose as you move forward. And so developing healthy habits, and it's something that's new to you. You've never worried about your weight before. And now all of a sudden you're on your own, and there's a lot of fast food being ordered. There's a lot of beer being consumed. There's a lot of stuff, and oftentimes less physical activity. And so now you're confronted with this new 15-pound weight gain that you have no explanation or plan for. And that can be a stressor that can ultimately affect your academics, your social life, your anxiety, your sleep. And that's all stemming from things that can be talked through with a doctor. So take home message is, for the young people who may be listening, or their parents, connect them to a doctor that they can rely on and that they have contact with while they're away, to help them navigate these decisions that are going to come up, especially when it's decisions that they don't want to talk to you as a parent about. They don't want to talk to you about their marijuana or their alcohol or their possible sexually transmitted infection, but they need to talk to somebody about it. And so, having a connected health space where you can go and talk in a safe and confidential and comfortable space can be very helpful.
Deb, I feel like the freshman 20 to freshman 30 on a health side, does that equate to like student loan debt on the financial side? That, you're out of college now and you're saddled with a ton of student loans. Do you start immediately having to pay those back? What is the right way to even tackle that as you go forward after college?
Yeah, so you can have extra weight from student loans for sure. And I have some friends from high school, long-term friends, who went to undergraduate school and then went to graduate school and really looked at student loans as free money, without thinking through the repayment process. And they can be, in today's world, especially if your profession brings you to something like medicine or law, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, the good news is, right now, there are some loans that reset to 0% interest. So that's one of the important things to look at, is what's the interest rate on your loans? Some may be pretty low, and they may also give you a very long repayment plan. So you may be able to repay this stuff over 20, 30 years. What I often tell folks is there's two sides of a balance sheet, right? What you own and what you owe. And there's also two sides of cash flow. It's what's coming in, right? And what's going out. You need to balance both of those. So if you get your first job and you can barely make ends meet, typically you can call some of those providers with student loans and make some payment plan arrangements. But as a rule, those loans that have the lower interest rates, string them out as long as you can, in my opinion, because you need to make the cash flow work for you. And don't take on student loans just because you can, if you have other means of paying for some of your schooling. I know when I reached age 40, I felt like I hit a milestone because I was finally able to pay off all of my student loans. And that felt amazing to me, but I was 40 years old. And I know some people who are even older than that and still paying down either their student loans and or also their kids' student loans. And so again, you just have to be mindful. There are some schools out there who would love to have student Smith as someone at their school, and they're willing to give them a nice scholarship. And there's another school down the road that may not be willing to do that. So I think parents also have a responsibility to sit with their kids when it's time to look at these schools and literally make a list. Here's what this school costs, and here's what that school costs, and here's what this school's willing to give to you as an incentive to attend, and this is what this school is willing. And at the end of that exercise, look at the bottom line and talk honestly about, what do you want your balance sheet to look like when you're done with school? Would you like to graduate with no loans, which means your first job, that money can go towards rent, your own place, car if you want a car, and some fun and savings? Or do you want your balance sheet to have a lot of debt on it so that first paycheck, half of it goes to pay down the debt and the other half goes to other necessities, and there's not a lot of wiggle room for fun. So again, being mindful about it, how you not just on how you take out the loans, why you take out the loans, when you take out the loans, but how you repay them. You've got to look at all of those sides. But there's good debt and bad debt. Not all student loans are bad, but it has to be manageable.
I actually had a question, just with all of the social media and kind of internet driven business. We find, because I'm hearing conversations from my own kids about wanting to start their own like internet based business in college, and how they're starting businesses and trying to acquire loans to do that on top of school loans and these things. So the first part of that question is, how would you counsel somebody who has an entrepreneurial side as a college student at 18, 19, 20 years old? And number two, specifically for the scholar athletes, now that the NCAA has allowed them to brand themselves while they're in school, those are gonna be the campus students that are going to be looking to try to do these kind of business or pseudo business ventures, which could get them into financial trouble. I won't say needlessly, but I just wonder, like, how would you counsel that kid who says they want to, start doing consignment pop-up shopping and they want to make a business out of it while they're also trying to go to school and they have no capital to do it. So they want.
Right. So there are a lot of benefits to the gig economy, right? If you've got a good idea, you might be able to take it and run with it. We had one client whose son went to the University of Illinois and started his own business because they have a major now in entrepreneurship. And he actually went on Shark Tank and presented his idea. And although they didn't buy into it, it's become quite successful. But that was part of a program, right, where the school helped to fund it and create it. And I think sometimes kids, for better or worse, are a little naive about how much goes into building a business. And the best way to fund that business is obviously with your own money and not to borrow, because most likely in fine print at the bottom of whatever loans they're willing to give a college kid, the interest is going to be pretty darn high. But if it can be self-funded, and again, looking at both sides of the balance sheet, it's not just selling on consignment, to use your example, but how much of your time is going to be devoted to that? And is that time going to take away from something else that could lead you to a professional career that could garner you even more money? When you look at the athletes, that's a really tough one. I have some clients who are professional athletes. And I asked once, why would a kid in his senior year not finish, got a full ride? Why wouldn't that kid finish his year or her year and get that degree? Because, one busted knee, one broken shoulder, one neck injury, and you're unemployed because you see that sport as your career. And it was all about the money. He said, you can't tell these young kids not to go for it. And so what I would advise those student athletes is to find, like you said, a good professional. You want a financial advisor who's not out to make money for themselves, but they work for you. So we are independent financial advisors. I don't work for a big bank. I don't work for a mutual fund company. I don't work for an insurance company. I work for my clients. And so those athletes who are now making money that they may not have ever seen the likes of before need to find independent advisors who say, I'm working for you, and also create their own kind of board of directors so that they have a legal representative who can help them understand what they're getting into. Have an accounting, finance and accounting, they're related, but they're different. You need an accounting professional who can give you advice. And what we do is we try to create that personal board of directors for our clients so that there's a lot of questions I can answer, but I'm not too proud to say when I don't know an answer. and I refer to those other, or I defer to those other professionals to get the best advice and ideally the best outcome for my clients. Probably not too dissimilar from what you would do if you run into someone who needs a very specific type of advice for an ailment. You go to the specialist. So it is tough, especially when there's lots of zeros after the comma, but find those professionals who are honest and trustworthy. And one of the things I say often is, our business is tough because you can't put up a billboard that says, no, really, you can trust me.
Right.
But you have to develop that trust. So ask for referrals, from adults who have had successful careers somehow and seem to be financially secure, and get referrals from them for advisors who will help. And oftentimes, at no cost at all, professionals will love to help young people to succeed. And so it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg either to get good advice.
Yeah, and you and I have had this conversation plenty of times. That is exactly how we operate as far as a physician practice, where we don't work for your insurance company, we don't work for a hospital. We are completely independent and agnostic to what insurance you may have. We consider ourselves working for our patients, for our clients as well. And also, I thought you were going to spit out the word, but quarterbacking, and I know that that's very much what you help to do when it comes to, accountants and lawyers and getting everybody on the same page on a financial setting for your clients. And that's what we try to do, the same thing as well on the health, and keeping, one doctor knowing what the other doctor is knowing, and making sure that you, the patient, know what you need to know so that you're prepared. But I guess we're getting a little bit to our time. So I want to just kind of give Dr. Conti a minute or two, just for any last thoughts about the one thing I don't know that we really talked about was what should a young adult, what should their health regimen look like? Because I know a lot of young people who stop going to the doctor very quickly think, I don't need to go to the doctor, I'm not sick, I'll go when I'm sick. And years and years and years go by without them having a physical, blood work, any of those things. So what does like an annual program look like for a young adult? What should they be doing?
Okay, and that's a really good question. So we'll start with self-care. So one, you need to, there are some regular interval assessments you should be doing, for yourself to assess your own health and wellness. So you should be checking your weight, using a calculator that you can get. Any number of apps can help, and you can use your weight and your height to calculate your body mass index. If you're male, you should be doing a testicular self exam starting in your 20s every month. And if you're female, you should be doing breast self exams even in your 20s, even though they're a little more challenging because the breast tissue changes as you get older. But you want to get into that kind of habitual mode of performing the self exam every month, so that when it becomes more important, you're already in the mindset and in the habit of doing those things. You should be seeing your physician, your primary care physician, at least once a year in your 20s. And that's if you have no chronic medical conditions. During that exam, they should be getting blood work, which should include a metabolic panel, a complete blood count, perhaps a thyroid study, vitamin B12, folate levels, as well as your cholesterol panel. So you should be getting that. They can check a urinalysis at that time, make sure your kidney function is normal, make sure you're not spilling sugar in your urine, which would be an indicator of perhaps developing diabetes. You want to make sure you're properly hydrated. We lose count of how many people we find that appear to be fluid depleted and dehydrated at baseline just based on their urinalysis. If you are fairer complected, then whether you're exercising good skin hygiene or not, you should have a clinical skin exam. And if your primary care doctor doesn't feel comfortable or confident enough to do it, then they should be referring you to a dermatologist. If you are at risk for early onset skin cancer, then you should be seeing a dermatologist every year, even in your 20s. You should be getting eye exams at least every year until the optometrist, the eye care professional, tells you, well, maybe we don't need to see you every year. You should be seeing your dentist at least twice a year for dental cleanings and at least once a year for a clinical dental exam. And more, the more and more we learn about the relationship between dental health and cardiovascular health, the more critical it becomes to have good oral hygiene, because we're finding that people who have poor oral hygiene also are at greater risk of developing earlier onset cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, strokes. So those are things that you should be doing routinely, even in your 20s. And if your doctor begins to tell you, oh, well, I don't need to see you this year, you can wait another year, then you might consider a different doctor, because we're trying to help develop good habits now that you should be then being able to build upon as you get older. The average American adult doesn't see the doctor nearly enough right now, largely because the primary care health system in general is such a cumbersome process. It takes so much time and coordinated effort just to be seen. But you really you should be able to, one, see your doctor at those regular intervals, and then have the relationship and the access that allows you to see them when you need them. And, unfortunately, in many of the traditional primary care spaces, that's not going to happen right now. I think the average length of time between appointment need and appointment scheduled is still approaching 30 days. And the average length of a visit is about 15 minutes. So, it's hard to develop healthy habits and have important conversations in that space. So you may want to look at other alternatives that are becoming more affordable, just as we were talking about financial planning. If you really weigh the benefit and the return on investment that you get from having a good relationship with a physician that you have literally unlimited access to, and you weigh it against what we already spend a lot of our money on, the average American adult spends over almost $1,500 a year on fast food. You can get a really good direct patient care, concierge medicine provider experience for about the same price and be healthier, because now you're not spending your money on Wendy's, Burger King, McDonald's. So again, those are the things that will help you now develop the habits that will serve you later. And we talked about those, knowing that family history. So if you have a family history, say, of early onset breast cancer, early onset testicular cancer, certain types of blood disorders, then that should shorten your timeline and make you even more vigilant. Because I know it sounds like it's a scary thing to be thinking about all these bad things, but we do know that when bad things are diagnosed earlier, the chances of recovery are significantly greater, to the tune of about 70 to 80% less chance of having bad outcomes if you have something diagnosed early. So what we don't want is, we don't want fear to drive people to push off developing healthy habits any more than we want just youth to drive off that desire. And we're here to help you with that at Connected Health. We're not here to take away all of the freedoms and fun of being in your 20s, because it should still be fun. I mean, college should be a blast. You're only going to get to do it one time, and you've got your whole adult life to then become a grown-up. But in this space of college and young adulthood, there's still some important behaviors you should be developing, and I think that's what we try to communicate tonight.
And Deb, do you have some final thoughts on healthy habits that you can impart us with as we end the call?
Absolutely. Dr. Conti, I am one of those who doesn't go regularly because I'm a healthy girl, but now I won't feel embarrassed showing up and saying there's nothing wrong with me. I just want you to tell me there's nothing wrong with me.
That's right. We like
Instead
the
of feeling like
patients too.
I just don't want to feel like a hypochondriac. I'm here, so now I know I'm here because I want to stay healthy. That's a great way to phrase it. What I was going to say is, oftentimes I've had clients implement a saving incentive plan for their kids, and I think it's a really nice way to start your kids saving early and saving often. If they have summer jobs, you can put money aside in a retirement account that you can't touch until you're in your 60s. But if, let's say, you have a job waiting tables or an internship somewhere, or even I was a lifeguard, right? Great summertime job. You can save either tax-free or on a tax-deductible basis some of that money into a retirement account. And sometimes I've seen the parents offer to match. So if their kids are willing to invest, say, $1,000 of their summer earnings, the parent will match that $1,000. So now they've got $2,000 that's starting an account that can continue to grow over time. And one of the examples I like to give is, just doing a little bit. It's like voting, vote early and vote often. If you graduate from college and you just save $5,000 a year for 10 years, right? That's $50,000 just from 25 to 35. If you save $5,000 a year and then never put another cent away, that money grows, let's say it's 7%, which is a reasonable balanced portfolio, reasonable rate of return. You'd have over $500,000. In fact, you'd have over $600,000 by the time you hit age 65. And that's just doing it early on in your career. If you'd continue that on and on and on and continue to investing $5,000 from age 25 to 65, because of the magic of compounding interest, money grows money grows money. I think Albert Einstein said it was the 8th wonder of the world, was the magic of compounding interest. So from 25 to 65, you put away $5,000 a year, year after year after year, you'd have over $1 million saved by the time you hit retirement at just a 7% average annual rate of return, which again is historically supportable without taking too much risk. So do the things you know you should be doing early, taking care of your health, taking care of your wealth. Break a pattern. If you didn't learn this in your family, learn it today and start something new. It's a great habit. And a little bit can go a long way because of the magic of compounding interest. It is the 8th wonder of the world. And I think our younger generation have all the abilities in the world to become wonderful citizens long after we're gone. So if anybody has questions on how to start that or how to continue that or how to break a cycle of debt or not saving, I'm always happy to help young people succeed.
Deb, do you just want to tell us your website address or your phone number, anything for anyone that wants to get in touch with you?
Sure. And I don't know if we have a chat area or not, but we can also send this out to those who may be around. So the firm I work with right now is Signature Financial Planning. I'm a partner and an advisor there. Our website is signaturefp, as in financialplanning.com. And you can email me directly from the website. You can call the office. We're working mostly remotely, sometimes in the office, but for the most part, we're doing Zoom right now to keep everybody safe. So happy to help wherever I can. Please reach out.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Conti, as well for your time. We are Connected Health. We're in Wexford. Our website is connectedhealthpgh.com and our telephone number is 724-933-4300. Happy to talk to anybody that's interested in learning more about the type of primary care program that we offer. Thank everybody for participating tonight, and we'll look forward to doing this again soon. Bye.
Stay safe.
Everybody. Bye.
Bye.